This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is I J Hudson, a dear friend, a coach, mentor, and my neighbor. Thank you, I J, for coming to our show. I greatly appreciated that.
Thank you.
And as you know, most of your life you have been a journalist. And so can you give me an overview? What was all about the 30-year journey that you had?
Well, Frank, it started out when I was 15 years old and couldn't drive. And I went to work at a local radio station which had 250 watts power, which, I mean, there are probably light bulbs today that have more power than that radio station.
Long years ago.
Long years ago. Then in college and in the Navy, I had jobs that were related to broadcasting, and then I came out and started a professional career in commercial television broadcasting that took me through 7 cities and a variety of jobs, from early morning anchor to reporter to weekend anchor in, again, 7 cities, from Milwaukee, Green Bay, Columbus, Ohio, New Orleans, San Diego, Chicago, and then I landed here in 1985.
Washington, D.C., Channel 4.
Channel 4.
Right.
And I covered a wide variety of things during that time, of course, and it was kind of fun going to a new city and learning a new culture, a new way of pronouncing words, because there are a lot of local things like this. And of course, everybody has great food, right? And you get something in Green Bay, there's something in foods for Chicago. New Orleans was a good place to be too. And they were all good news towns, and you got a chance to meet and talk to a whole bunch of people. And then I covered a lot of politics in Montgomery County, Maryland. I covered a lot of high-tech goings on in Northern Virginia, and it was a good career.
So what was it most memorable for you? I'm sure in the 30-year span of career, there are a lot of things which is memorable.
Sure,
That kind of sticks in your mind? What do you remember? What is the most memorable event that you had?
That's tough. I've done probably 3,000 stories, but I got to thinking about that. And different levels, different stories. One story was I was working in Chicago, and I happened to be in Indiana at the time covering another story when we heard that there was a construction site. They just built a big flyover, and there were men working on this flyover, but the concrete hadn't properly cured, and it collapsed with those people.
My goodness.
We drove up, and there were literally people
under the rubble?
Concrete.
Is that right?
They were walking around, and I was trying to say, do you feel like talking? And they would sort of describe what was going on.
And this was, what year was this?
Oh, this would have been about 1985,
Okay,
1986.
Okay.
I remember a shootout with police in Linda Vista, California, where we were right there when there was a guy in there with a shotgun. And he wasn't going to surrender. And he started firing out at the officers, and they rushed him and they shot him. We were there for that. I was there for the first recovery of the space shuttle when it came in at Edwards Air Force Base. It covered hurricanes. I covered a little girl who was trying to get a bone marrow transplant. Oh. Sweetest little girl over in Prince George's County. And I remember she didn't want to talk to any reporters, but I pulled out a dollar bill and had her hold her hand up here, and we started playing games. And she liked that. And the little girl came out that wanted to talk a little bit about, how she felt and how she'd like to have, people help her if they could, but if they couldn't help her, to help someone else.
Wow.
There's lots of
There's a lot of stories like that. So you retired from Channel 4 about 8 years ago. So
yes.
What's the life after Channel 4 retirement?
There is life.
There is a life after retirement. I know that part.
I wasn't sure for a while. I went for a few months trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to focus on? What is there that I know how to do that somebody would like me to do for them? And essentially, I went into consulting briefly. I J Hudson LLC, but it's basically, I try to make people's messages a little easier to understand. Sometimes people write things, they say things, they put copy together, and they think they're saying this. When in essence, if they change it just a little bit or change the words around, people would better understand what they were talking about. And sometimes, you're in a hurry, you want to do it yourself, but you need a second pair of eyes to come in and say, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this? And propose something else.
That's a very, very important thing.
Doing a little
delivery message.
Yeah, doing a little bit of charity work. I hope to do just a little bit more. And then I do help people with presentations and speeches, and go out to eat a lot, watch a few movies, and I spent a lot of time walking on the C&O Canal for exercise, and taking a lot of pictures.
In Potomac, Maryland?
Yeah, I've been Great
And
Falls,
the River
and a
Road?
number of the locks.
Yeah.
I'm out there probably
This
3-4
is
days
the
a
time
week.
that gives you to write, research, and reflect.
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds.
It
I
is
come
the
back
best of
with
both
photographs.
worlds. Yeah.
It's great.
So what do you miss about being a TV reporter?
I think there are two important things that I miss, and it's the access and it's the education. There used to be an old saying that the freedom of the press means the press gets in free. Well, that's partially true. Used to go to a lot of events and things and cover things that the ordinary Joe is not going to see.
That's also
And
true.
you talk to the big people, you talk to the small people, you talk to everybody. And the education part is I was exposed to so many technologies, smart minds, visionaries, forward thinkers about how this technology is going to fit with this technology to make an advancement in something. I mean, when I first started covering technology, Frank, viruses were on 3.5-inch floppy drives, and they got spread around in college labs from computer to computer. We have gone past that a tad.
Right.
And I was also in on the development of HDTV and did the actual first HDTV
High definition
live
television.
report in
Wow.
Washington, D.C. Our audience was a few lawmakers, the FCC, and a few bigwigs here and there. That was kind of fun too.
So the purpose of a TV reporter, as I see it, is to report the news as they see it, correct? Not to interpret the news, not to give their own opinion on the news, which I see on some channels here. What's your thought on that?
Well, let's just say that the nature of TV news has changed markedly. It took a big change in the 1980s when local news, the definition of it was changed. It went from local news to news of local interest, which meant that there could be TV stations all over the country that were including the biggest fire, the biggest murder trial, the biggest thing. They all had those news events in their local newscast, as well as some of the local news. And as they brought in news from satellites into their newsroom to put on the newscast, that gave a shrinking space for the true local news. So that was one big change. As far as reporters and their bias, everyone has bias. If you recognize it and try and keep it out, you're not going to be always 100% successful. But I've said for millions of years, I am almost that old, that what reporters do is report different versions of the truth.
Different versions.
Everybody's got their version of the truth. Eyewitness testimony sometimes, if you talk to most lawyers and police, is some of the most unreliable thing. It's almost like playing the telephone game when we were kids, when you whispered from person to person to person, and the words that went in are not the words that came around and came out of somebody else's mouth. So, reporters have a tough job.
They do have exactly, I agree. What do you miss least about being a TV reporter?
Standing in the middle of rain and snow and telling people that it's raining and snowing. I'd give people for a little more credit or sense than that. That's the big thing. Of course, I had a pretty bad schedule. I was up at 2:30 in the morning.
2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that was be there so I could come in and go over stuff, and I'd be sent out to a live shot somewhere, and then sometimes I was anchoring. That was big because you have to be on the fly interpreting if something is going on. And you need to have a pretty broad knowledge of who people are, international leaders, and what is the significance of this story. Because sometimes institutional knowledge is a wonderful thing about journalism. That's what's missing from a lot of what we have today. Right now, because of our technology, it's way ahead of our ability to process it and mold it into what I would call a good, fair story.
Now, if somebody offered you a job, would you take it now that you're retired?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I think there could be some aspects of it that I would really enjoy.
Well,
Fun, maybe helping some of the younger folks with some of their work. But the truth is, Frank, everyone thinks they're a reporter right now. They have a cell phone that has a camera in it. They shoot something. Does that make them a journalist? Absolutely not. Where is the context? How was this shot? What was that person thinking? What were they trying to capture with it? In many instances, they have an honest version of what happened in front of them. But do they see the bigger picture? What was going on over here? Is there time to ask questions? Do we even ask the questions? Do we put it up, we think this is what it is, and then we find out later that's wrong? All of this supposition, both video and reports, goes on the internet. People see it, they like it, they spread it, or they don't like it and they spread it. And they generally gravitate to points of view and videos that support the way they already feel. So you can instantly have a huge story out there that's false. And I mean, we have our own publications now who are not vetting their sources. We have local instances, a UVA story that's been going on right now.
Oh, the one from the University of Virginia.
Yes.
There was what's the name of the journalist? I remember the name, but there was what's the name of the publication was?
Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone.
Okay, and you have another one. We have this story that was in The Week recently, and it's been other places about this young man doing stock market trading in his lunch hour. Said he made $73 million.
I did see that.
Yeah, didn't happen. It's not true.
It's not true.
No, but still you'll see it on the internet time after time. And when people go back in 30 years and decide to do a research thing on the journalism and the internet, they're going to find all this stuff is still here. That's why it's so important for corporations when something is not accurate that is put out there, that they go and get it corrected.
So the fact checking is a very important ingredient.
Extremely important, because social media has the power to make things happen.
That is
really fast.
true. Yeah. Now, what's your thought on what's going on the Hill in terms of the dysfunctional Congress? The political environment has become so toxic these days. They cannot work together. However, they were able to pass the budget, so the government is not shut down, which is a great thing to do. Mm-hmm. So, what's your thought on that? What's going on over there?
What's going on over there? I may not be the best person to answer that question.
Well, I will be looking at your personal opinion on this thing.
Okay. Well, I don't see any change in the dysfunction going right now. There's some good things that could happen, and as a guy who has always tried to vote for the best man, I just wish people would drop the partisanship and use common sense. That's what I see missing. Common sense and getting along with people and stepping across the aisle for the good of people instead of doing nothing.
So become a problem solver.
Exactly.
Represent your constituency rather than representing your own personal interest.
Yeah, there's talk, and I think you've written about this too. It's about there's an inequity in who has more say in policies of the government right now. It is the people who have more money. It is the PACs. It is not the common.
They're influencing the decision maker, and that's not what this is not what this country is all about.
No,
everybody should have a say, but obviously that's not been the case.
Not now, but there may be changes that suggest there'll be some new players coming in town that may be able to change some of that.
So what do you think of that idea that there was a tag along the bill that you can contribute as much as you like?
Well, I saw one interpretation of that says, okay, that means that more individuals are going to have more power, that have more money, and perhaps the PACs won't have quite as much power. They'll still be doing the money.
But the individual will be able to influence the influence makers. They will advance their own personal agenda. Yeah. That is the reason they're there. They're making their contribution.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Frank, what I would really like to see is I would like to see some knowledgeable person, say you, who would write a textbook that would be used as a civics course in high school and in college. See how government is supposed to work, but then how it really is. Is it the House of Cards series on television? I don't know.
I don't know either. Let's talk a little bit about the race relationship in our country. We have come a long way in this nation, and I'm a good example of America's beneficiary, America's generosity and kindness, and America's inclusiveness and openness. What's going on in Ferguson and what happened? What's your take on it?
My take is that the more we talk about things, the more divided we get. That it's divided us into camps, and I think social media, the internet, is partially responsible for that. We tend to respond to things that we agree with. We can always find an example of something that supports our opinion on the internet, and it just builds and it builds and it builds. What's important is to take the conversation and turn that into solutions. I personally hate meetings. I hate commissions. I want something done.
You want to get something done.
You talked about the Kerner Commission report.
Right.
That's
60s. Exactly.
We talk about let's do this, but then nobody comes along and says, okay, here's the money to support this.
Yeah.
Here is how we're going to make this work in the law so it actually does something. Do something. It's just like the saying before, if somebody leaves a bag in an airport, or if you're suspicious people, see something, say something. It should be.
That's very well said. See something, say something.
More than that, see something,
do something about it.
Get it done.
So, what do you have an advice for a budding journalist who wants to be like you?
Don't be like me. That'd be the first thing.
Okay, who wants to be inspired by your story and get engaged?
The story is a young guy my high school graduating class was 26.
Right.
I was a valedictorian. I think I barely had a B. No, it's a little better. But to be curious, to ask questions, to check out what people tell you, write from the heart, and tell stories so people understand something, not just vague things or horse races like in politics. Oh, he's ahead to this, and this. It's easy to cover horse races. It's not so easy to drill down to the issues that make a difference in people's lives.
Well, be passionate, be committed, what you do.
Exactly.
Well, that's a great advice. Well, thank you very much, IJ, for sharing your thoughts. That has been very constructive narrative and thoughtful narrative. Thank you very much for coming to our show.
Thank you.
So this is our show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week. And thank you very much for watching.